Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created a revolutionary noseless and bumpless bicycle seat for both men and women. Please help me welcome the co-founder of VSEAT, Bryan Visintin. How's it going, Bryan?
Hey. Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here. Glad to talk about all of our IP and
Yeah,
how
for
important it is.
No, absolutely. I know we were talking offline, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one. It seems like you guys have some crazy stories, and just like the origin of the company is pretty cool. Just kind of telling that story. I guess I kind of getting off into things. Always have the guests kind of describe their product, just so the audience, the viewers, can kind of get a sense of what it is that you all have created. So, can you kind of talk a little bit about the VSEAT and what is a VSEAT?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my partner Ani and I created a noseless and bumpless bike seat. Anybody who's a cyclist who's ridden for, I don't know, I'd even say 20 minutes or more on a bike, has most likely felt the nose of that bike seat. And it's either made them gone numb or it's got some sort of irritability or something in the genital area. And so I was a personal trainer, and my client at the time was Ani, who is now my partner, and she refused to sit on a bike. And after about 10 minutes of training her and kind of going back and forth as to why as to trying to convince her to get on the bike, she finally let me know that she didn't want to sit on a bike because she didn't want to irritate her lady bits. And so as soon as I found that out, I Googled it just to make sure she was, legit. It was actually a thing. I mean, I was a trainer for, 15 years at this point, and it's like I noticed it myself when I'd ride a bike, but I never thought about the female anatomy, probably for obvious reasons on a bike. And it was a little shocking at first that I just didn't even think about it. You work in the industry and it's like, how did I not notice this before? And Nani's incredibly intelligent, and I think she could see all this going on in my head and in my face. And we both looked at each other, and we kind of, without saying anything, agreed to do something about this. And that's when we came up with the idea of the VSEAT, or that's when the idea was born. At that point, after we'd bought every noseless option that was out there, and knew that we needed to, I guess, design one ourselves, that is when we went down the patent road. And that was it. That was its own hurdle in itself to get through. At the time, Ani was in law school and was actually in a patent class. And as I'm sure you can relate, Dave, it's like when you're in class with any sort of that law issue, that becomes your main focus.
For sure.
And so
And you
that was
guys
her
were
main
going through it
focus.
in like real time as well, which is even, I was just in patent law class in law school, and it was already interesting to me and curious because I knew I was going to be a patent attorney, but it was cool because you guys were actually going through this in real time. So I would imagine that her focus was even heightened given that aspect of it.
Oh yeah. And it's cool. And it's, I mean, I'm sure you talk about on this podcast, it's, the patent law is it really is its own world. And a normal attorney can't do what a patent attorney does.
Yeah.
And it is so important, and we'll come back to that.
For sure.
But first, so because she's a perfectionist about with everything she did, we actually in the cycling industry, and it was specifically with the bicycle seat industry, there's 10,000 patents.
Right.
And we had to go through every single one of those patents. I was done after like 1,000, but she's got the stamina when she's into something that just is never ending. And so it was probably 2 a.m. when we finally finished going through, and then we pulled out, I think it was I don't know, maybe 20 different patents that actually related to what we wanted to do.
So, and that's interesting because I guess if you're coming to me, say as a prospective client or as a client, and you say, hey, this is what I want, a noseless bicycle seat, I would say, okay, or at least for me, just kind of doing all these patentability searches that I've done over the years, I would typically kind of, in a search, kind of break the criteria down as far as a noseless bicycle seat, just so I'm only pulling those, especially if you know that your bicycle seat is going to be a noseless bicycle seat. Is that something that you guys did? I know you said 10,000 patents. Did you guys search
Yes.
even though it had a nose, or was it strictly two noseless bicycle seats that you guys were kind of looking up out of curiosity?
Dave, I'm telling you, I'm with you. I would have been done on just the noseless search, but no. I mean, she's Persian Armenian, so you started perfect. So no, we had to check them all, just in case.
Right.
just,
No, for
just
sure.
in case.
Yeah, I look, yeah. But yeah, man, and again, I guess when you're not paying anybody to do it, it's just easier to go through those things. But if you're kind of, I guess, paying a patent attorney or whatever, you want to kind of get straight to the meat as opposed to kind of
And that probably could have been the case. Yeah, that probably could have been the case. And let's say she wasn't taking this class at the time and was in it, then that that might have been the case. The other thing too is through her law school, we also had free access to everything.
Yep.
So that helped too, and you might as well take advantage of that while we had that through the law school.
For sure. So then I guess let me ask you this. So, and as I again doing some preparation, some research in preparation for this interview, I didn't realize the benefits of, it's a kind of a two-part question I have for you. So I didn't realize the benefits of not, I guess, irritating or essentially a noseless bicycle, having the actual your weight kind of being on the actual seat in a specified manner. Seems like it has a lot of benefits as far as kind of blood flow and things like that. Can you kind of go through those benefits and whether or not you knew of those benefits prior to actually kind of getting off into the design of the VSEAT?
Yeah, absolutely. So I sort of mentioned it. Anyone who's gone for I don't know, more than 20 minutes, you start to feel a numbness down there.
Yep.
And essentially the way we're built is we have this tube called your perineum. And in that perineum are vital nerves and arteries that all feed blood flow to the genitalia, whether you're male or female. So initially, when you're just sitting on a bike seat, you can kind of picture it like, you got the wider part of a bike seat. One thing is I don't have actually any traditional bike seats around me. I have a ton of V seats, but because we got rid of all those. But anyway, you're sitting on there and you got the nose. And essentially you're straddling the nose of that bike seat.
Yep.
And it just in general human laziness, the more tired we get, the more we start just to lean into things. Yep. And go down onto things. And that's part of the theory as to why I think, some people will go numb so fast on it. It's because they get on it and they just sit down onto there. With the V seat, you're sitting on your sit bones only. It's just your sit bones. So you're not touching. There's that perineum is not being touched by anything. The only place you're feeling pressure is on your sit bones. And I mean, even if you think about the name of it, it's your sit bones. It's we're made to sit on them. Our structural support is made to sit on those things.
For sure.
Yeah. We weren't designed to straddle this like nose thing that's on there. So the initial, I knew that there was something, you could tell from me cycling. I'd always feel it after a long ride. I'd get up and be numb, but as a stubborn male, it was kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to suffer through this because this is just what it is, and blah, 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 blah. Well, females are smarter than we are, They're not going to keep banging their head against the wall.
That's very true.
They're just going to say, no, I'm not going to do it, which was the case with Ani, and our theories is the case with a lot of females out there. And that's why you see more males riding than females. There's a clear difference in the amount of male riders versus female riders. And that's part of our theory, actually. You would think, would it really come down to a bike seat? Well, yes. I mean, yes. If something hurts, we stop doing it. So that was kind of, we had an idea that it was like that. Then once we bought the seats that were out there to test them, it was kind of like everyone that we bought was only okay. There wasn't enough thought put into it, or they stopped short somewhere, or they cut off the nose and left the rest of it, and they didn't put any design, so that when you put it on your bike, it just looks so bad.
Yeah.
And then when you sit on it, it just doesn't even feel great. You're like, okay, well, you solved the noseless problem, but now I got this dumb looking thing that doesn't feel good on my bike. And cyclists, any real cyclist out there, the aesthetics of their cycling is very important to them. I mean, that's why you see, you'll see those group of cyclists that they're all in the same outfit. Yep. If you knew anything about cycling and you looked at their bikes, like their components are like the top-notch components. Yep. They're going to match the colors, and it's very important. The aesthetics of cycling is very important to anyone who's serious about cycling. And so we knew we needed something that also is going to be appealing to the eye. And so we bought every noseless that was out there. And then we went through all the patents of everything that existed out there. And after we were through with all that, we still didn't have our actual shape. At this point, we knew what was out there. We knew what existed. And we didn't really know what our design needed to be. We just knew it needed a combination of almost all of this stuff. So we were sitting, this was in Ani's apartment, and she doesn't remember this, but I do, because I was watching it. But we're sitting there, we got foam and duct tape and scissors, and we're like, I just don't know what it's going to be like, and we had our computer girl at the time, so it was the three of us, and I think it needs to look like this. No, it needs to look like this, until Ani it was almost like the universe channeled through her, and she stands up and she goes, no. She grabs this piece of foam and she grabs scissors and just starts cutting. Foam's flying everywhere. And then when all the foam settles and the dust settles, there in her hand is like basically our modern shape of the VSEAT. And we're like, that's what it needs to look like. So we duct taped it up real quick, went down to the exercise bike, threw it on, and both sat on it. And we're like, this is it. This is what we need to do. And then our patent began after that, based on our design and then the utility and all that stuff. So.
And that's a crazy story. And I was going to, as I was watching Shark Tank, which we'll get off into later, and just even hearing about the price of it, you think, okay, $100, $120 for a bike seat. But I think, as you pointed out, and if you're a cyclist, which is another thing that I like about your guys' product, because it appeals to pretty much everyone, because it's not just young people ride the bike or old people ride the bike. You have all different age groups that are riding bikes, and then you have indoor bike, you have stationary bike, and you have outdoor biking. So it's a lot of different bikes as well that you can put this seat on, which is cool. But when you start to think about what people spend for their bikes, this is not like, see, I'm that guy who's spending $120 or a couple $100 for a bike, but these things can get very expensive within thousands of dollars. So it makes it's almost like, okay, $110, $120. That, it may seem expensive to someone like me, but for an avid bike rider who's serious about this stuff, for a cyclist, that's an investment well worth it, especially if you're running a bike a lot, you're talking about being able to kind of protect yourself or have this comfortability while you're riding. So I guess as I started to think about it a little more, it's like, oh man, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's also too, the cool thing is we got this e-bike market that's starting to pop up now. And the e-bike market is a whole game changer. It's like all of a sudden people who thought that they would never ride a bike again, and this could be the older crowd who's like, I just don't really want to do it. They're getting on these e-bikes and they're like kids again, because all of a sudden they got pedal assist. Yep. They got a throttle if they want it. And it's like, whoa, this is awesome. And, they can go to these places that they couldn't do before, where they had to, they needed the pedal power. Yep. So there's a whole market opening up with that. And the e-bike market has been very responsive to us, which has been cool. Because these are people who haven't ridden bikes in, years, and all of a sudden they sit on it, and the first thing they go is they sit on that traditional saddle and go, oh no, I'm not sitting on this. Like, there's got to be a more comfortable bike seat out there. And then the people that know about us will pick up a VSEAT, and then hopefully the people who don't know about us, their friends will tell them to pick up a VSEAT.
Exactly. And I always like to hear what you kind of explained, the story, the origin, which I love. Because a lot of times with these kind of companies, these products that are being built, these companies that are being built off of the products, off of the IP, it stems from an actual real life problem that you're trying to solve. As you explained, that Ani, she didn't want to ride the bike, so as opposed to just kind of letting that pass, you guys decided to do something about it. And a lot of times, you guys don't have the experience, or I guess the expertise in that particular field. Like you said, you were a trainer, she was a lawyer, and had a degree in chemistry, so it wasn't like you guys were kind of bike manufacturers or expert bikers, but just being able to figure it out. Let me ask you this: what made you guys kind of, I guess, keep going and say, okay, we're going to figure this thing out, even though we maybe don't know anything about bike seats or manufacturing a bike seats or designing a bike seat? Because I think, and this is be good for the audience, where a lot of people, they come up with an idea, but it just stays in their head, as opposed to them saying, okay, I'm gonna see this thing through. Because you guys, seeing it through, and you talking about designing it in, and kind of the back and forth in the apartment, as opposed to, like I said, just letting this ideal escape and just kind of going about your regular life. But you're like, no, we're really going to see this thing through. What was that kind of process like, and that kind of mindset to be able to say, okay, yeah, we're going to kind of do something about it, as opposed to, I guess, say whatever and move on and never ride the bike, or Ani never ride the bike because she has this issue. Because that's fascinating to me, and I think from the viewers, that's something that I think more people can kind of really take from, as far as, okay, the mindset of, okay, I have an idea to this problem that I'm experiencing, and I'm gonna see this thing through, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple different things. One, we're both stubborn. Yeah, and it's you get two stubborn people together, and if you're both aligned, then you get like 4 times the stubbornness. Uh, but really, it's related to that. It's also, she's a great partner.
Okay.
And I think when two people have an idea, if one person has an idea, boy, that would be tough. It would be
Seems so overwhelming.
to keep yourself, yes, motivated to continue moving forward, and that type of thing. Whereas when you have a partner, it's I mean, we feel lucky that we both have each other, because my weak points are her strong points, and vice versa. And so that worked out. That worked out well. Also, and you're always going to have your days of where you're like, you hit a wall.
Yeah.
And one of you might be hitting a wall one day where the other one's not. So it's easier to get that person through that, to carry it through there. When you do hit those walls. So that was having a good partnership. Absolutely. Did it. That keeps you going through the tough times. Having a kind of a fun idea and something like this, like, why hasn't this been done before? That you learn that early on, and you learn that early on in the patent process. And so you get these little markers along the way, and these little wins that you get along the way that kind of tell you you're going in the right direction, and to keep going with it. And that's kind of how it's been for us. So early on, there was a few things before that were kind of gave us some good go signs, but early on, one of our biggest go signs was when it was time to pick our name. This was even before our patent, when we wanted our trademark. And we're like, okay, well, let's try to trademark VSEAT. Like, we don't know if it's even, if we even can. And we're like, well, we don't really know what we're doing. Let's just try this and trademark on whatever it was. I forget, one of those sites to get your trademark. And we put it in, and within a couple of days, it's like, you got your trademark. And we're like, whoa, wow, like, that's amazing. And so then a similar thing happened with our patent. Our first attempt, when we did it before we got our patent attorney, our first attempt was ourselves. And we got some green lights, and we're like, whoa, okay, cool. Like, this is good. But now we don't understand. Now we need a patent attorney, and we bring that on. And even with our patent attorney, we had a few wins of like, you get this, and this is working. And so I would say it was probably a combination of a good partner, and you get your little green flags along the way. And
I got you.
And when you get those signs, they keep you going. The other thing on top of that too, that I could say in hindsight, and this is something I'm just starting to really kind of get in my own head. but in hindsight, manifestation as well. And if you anything that you really want, that you're really passionate about,
Yep.
you're gonna get if you don't give up, and you just keep you just keep going in that direction, and you keep doing it. And it's like what we think becomes. I mean, and it's like I said, it's only been in the last couple of years that I really understood that. But I can say, looking back on things, yeah, it's 100% the case. I mean, I'm in my 40s now, and so you got some experience to where you can see that with other things as well. And so I'd say it's a combination of those things. It's finding the right person, because you got to stay motivated, and you got to stay positive with things. It's your little wins along the way that keep you going, and then it's also the passion behind it, and not giving up on it. Like I said, I really do believe that anything that your heart is really in, there's going to be opportunities are going to find you, and then it's just seizing those opportunities, and you can kind of keep going.
No, and I like that. And I guess as another, trying to kind of provide some practical tips to the viewers, to the audience, when they watch this, I guess another thing that I would like to ask, because again, it's not like you guys were designers or engineers when it came to, because again, I know I talked a little bit about the process being overwhelming, and I like what you said as far as, okay, it definitely may be overwhelming if you're going through it by yourself, but having another person, it kind of helps kind of manages things, or like I said, you guys can kind of work off each other. But as it relates to, okay, I have this ideal, okay, we think we have an idea of what it's going to look like. It's like, okay, what do I do now? Because again, like I said, you were a trainer, she was a lawyer. So it wasn't like you guys had this design or engineering experience to say, okay, I'm going to create this thing. So did you guys like watch YouTube videos? Did you guys bounce it off friends who maybe were designers or engineers? What helped you guys out from a practical standpoint to say, okay, this is how we're going to go into this next step as far as creating or designing or trying to bring this thing to life?
Yeah, that's another great question. So there's always people along the way. Our first couple prototypes we were sending out to very experienced riders,
okay,
to see what they were thinking, to also see if they could, where the weak points are, so we can make it stronger in case it breaks. And so we based it off a lot of that feedback.
Okay.
So pro riders who were riding it, and then as far as the design material, it's like we hired a mechanical engineer.
Nice.
So once we had that magical design that came through the universe through Ani, that she doesn't remember. She blacked out, by the way, for that.
Really?
She doesn't remember that. But I do, and our computer girl remembers as well. But anyway, once we had that design, then we took that design to a mechanical engineer, and we said, all right, this is what it needs to look like. Now make it work. And then once we had those designs, then we knew we wanted to manufacture locally, because we want to be agile and make any changes we need to. So we wanted to find somebody here in Southern California.
Gotcha.
And so each of these little processes you do, there's research that you do for each step. And I guess this is where it fits into the little wins. So we knew we wanted to make it the seat with injection molding. And so we needed to find, thankfully in Los Angeles, it's such a big city that you can get anything. I'd like to say you can find anything within 24 hours. So we found some injection mold people and took our idea to them and got our quotes. And we were almost going to go with this one company. And then it was, I think there's something that happened that we said, let's just try one more. Let's do one more send out of an email to find a manufacturer. And sure enough, we found the guy who we used today. He came back and he's like, yeah, I can help you. And here's what I can build that mold for. And his prices were like way good, almost to the point of like, it's like, what's going on? Why is this guy so expensive? And you can do it for this.
Yep.
And it turns out that this guy was able to do it for so much cheaper because he invested in his infrastructure, basically in these really sophisticated lathe machines that can do the heavy lifting of the initial building of our mold, so that he can build it for cheaper, and then he has his guys finish all the fine work of it, the artists, the metal artists. But anyway, so it's each step like that. So once we found the injection molder, then it was making the mold. before all that was 3D printing. So 3D printing, that was the way, and then testing those, and then finding our mold maker. And then once we had our first production version out, I mean, it was probably 6 months of sending that one out to people and testing it. And of course, testing it ourselves. I mean, I didn't ride my bike again. I was an avid cyclist, and ran from that moment when I first talked to Ani, and our aha moment of like, whoa, this really is bad.
Yeah.
I didn't sit on my bike for 2 years until we had our first
Really?
out. Yeah. And then I started getting back on it. So I'm always testing it as well.
Yeah.
And then thankfully at this point, we have enough customers out there, and we like to call them our VC champions now. The people that we can go to, and we get most of our feedback now from them, because we got a bigger market. It's not just our group. We actually have our customers who have been fantastic.
Nice.
And we're still making little changes, and we probably still will make little changes, and who knows when it will stop.
Yep. So let me kind of ask you about this. And I know we've been talking a little bit about the IP part of it. Was this something, and again, from my understanding, at least from kind of doing the research, you guys have 6 patents. It may be more, between utility and design patents, and there may be more, at this point in time. But did you guys always know about, I know you talked about Ani and being in law school and doing the patentability search and searching over 10,000 patents. Did you guys kind of know, like, hey, this is something that's important and we need to kind of get on this early on? Because again, I may be biased as a patent attorney, but I always say, to the extent that you can have your IP situated at the beginning, and almost like kind of building your house on with a great foundation, as opposed to kind of doing all this stuff and then trying to figure out the patent stuff later on. And I've had guests come on and talk about how it's difficult to get investors or try to find licensing opportunities, or a lot of things can be kind of a little bit more challenging if you don't have the IP protected from the beginning. So was this something that you guys always knew about ahead of time to say, okay, we have to kind of protect this thing at the beginning? Or was that something that you guys kind of came to realize as you were going throughout the process?
Yeah, it's and once again, and especially for your listeners out there, getting a patent early on was one of the best things we could have ever done. So I did not. Ani did. I did not, and I was probably like, I'm pretty typical in that. When you look at it, you're like, kind of like, really? Do we really need that? Like, oh, come on, that's just a marketing thing. Like, we don't really need that. Blah 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 blah. And now, once again, in hindsight, I'm like, how could I be thinking that? Like, why would I even be thinking that? It's so important. From a foundational perspective, it gives you something. We got legit IP now. It's like this is ours. So from that standpoint, that's important. From a psychological standpoint of like, dude, you got a patent, like that helps drive your business. Just knowing that alone, from the overall protective aspect of it, that's awesome to know. It just really kind of gives you your, I can't say a roadmap, but it gives you your like, it gives you your, I guess, as you said, it's your foundation, right? It's your foundation for what you're trying to do. And I couldn't imagine being at the point we're at now without that foundation. It would feel really weird. You also mentioned about you've had it where investors don't want to give you anything. Well, one of the biggest questions, one of the main questions, or one of the questions we were asked on Shark Tank was, do you have any patents? And Audie comes back with, yes, we have 6. And Lori was like, like, even there's a lot of stuff you don't see on screen, but all of them are like, okay, great, like da, 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 da. And right then I wanted to be like, God, I love you, Ani, like, thank you, like, for making us do this. And so it's just, yeah, I couldn't imagine not having one. And I think that is it, like as we said earlier, it's like the patent law is its own,
yeah, for sure,
area for a specific reason. What would we be without IP, right? Especially here in America, where so many companies are based on it. And then, on top of it, we're blessed to be Americans and have the USPTO backing us up. all the other, as we are getting our different patents around the world, all of these other agencies will base their stuff mostly off of the USPTO.
Yep.
And the USPTO is the gold standard
Sure.
for getting the rest of these. In fact, it's made getting a lot of our other patents easier because they can just refer to this and that type of thing. So I hope that answered your question.
No, for sure. And you said a lot of
understand like
you said a lot of great things in there. And again, we're talking about patents specifically, but again, when you're talking about building a brand, trademarks are important. You got the trademark for the VSEAT. So that's an important thing. So I mean, I'm always of the mindset that here in America, especially these times, we sell IP to others, whether it's a movie or favorite TV show, that's copyrighted. If you're talking about your favorite brands, the Starbucks, the Chick-fil-A's, the Nikes, that's trademarks. When you think about your favorite technology companies, the Apples, the Googles, the Microsoft, they have a number of patents. So I think that's what we sell, not only domestically here, but abroad. And another thing that I love that you said is, protecting your inventions abroad in different countries. I know offline we were talking about you guys kind of protecting it in Australia. And one of the things, for the listeners, just because you have a U.S. patent, that doesn't give you protection abroad. You have to file for protection in those different countries that you want to go into. And this is something that, especially maybe more so in other countries than the U.S., is very popular as far as bike riding, having a nice bicycle seat, a comfortable bicycle seat. And another thing that you said is that the USPTO is a lot of times the gold standard. Now, I know Europe and maybe even China, they kind of will do their own analysis, but it's so, as a patent attorney, it's so many, and I've kind of worked with a number of patent offices, like Japan, India, European patent office, the Chinese patent office, the Malaysian patent office, the Mexican patent office. And a lot of times, if you say in the response to these different office actions that, hey, these claims were allowed in the U.S., they're rubber stamping it as well. So I think you brought up a good point as far as the fact that if you have a patent in the U.S., it makes getting your patent in a lot of other countries that much more easier. And you can actually say in that response to the office action for that particular country that this was allowed in the U.S., and they'll take that and just kind of rubber stamp it. So I completely agree with that. And I was going to ask you about kind of protecting this thing abroad. So that's cool to hear that you guys are protecting this thing abroad, which specifically for your invention, I think is big because it has so much applicability in those other countries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And then like all of a sudden that kind of gives you you feel like you have a foundation there all of a sudden.
For sure. Yeah.
All right. It's like just going in selling it blankly it would just seem, at this point, I would look back and it would seem like we're missing something.
Yep.
So.
Yep. No, nice. So then I know we kind of talked a little bit about the Shark Tank, but I want to get off a little bit more into that at this point in time. So what was like the mindset of going into Shark Tank? I know I kind of talked with a fair amount of Shark Tank participants or past guests, and it kind of runs the gamut in terms of Shark Tank coming to them or a producer from Shark Tank coming to them and saying, hey, apply, or them, the person or the company just applying to Shark Tank on their own. I guess what was the process and what was the mindset to say, okay, we need to go on Shark Tank to really get things off the ground? Because obviously you're getting in terms of like advertising and again, it's a big push with being on Shark Tank. So what was that mindset for you? And I need to say, okay, let's go on Shark Tank and really kind of get this out to the masses.
Yeah. It's funny because it sort of relates to the origin of the VC. It's as soon as we had this idea and we started telling people about the idea, we were asked two questions. The first question was, okay, why hasn't this been done before? And the second question was, okay, are you going to go on Shark Tank? I mean, literally, like almost from the very beginning. And then we were laughing because, it took us a couple of years to get up and running. And we'd always laugh at like, we're going to apply to Shark Tank one day because people just keep asking us about this. And, we have to. So when we finally got to the point to where we felt like we were ready to apply for it, we did. And it was kind of like, it was almost one of those things where, when you're ready for something, it's like, once again, the universe is going to push you through. And also this goes back to what I was saying with the whole, what you think will happen. So it's like, we heard it so many times that like, you got to go on Shark Tank, you got to go on Shark Tank. Anything that we kind of hear multiple times, we pay attention to and we go, oh, okay, this is something like, in there. So I think it was so ingrained in our head that when it was time to do it, we were just like, this is the next step. And like, okay, let's apply to Shark Tank. And then that whole process, that whole process is a well-oiled machine. I mean, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly how to, like, cast you for it and that type of thing. So we went through the normal process of applying, and you get moved up through the levels. And before we knew it, we were walking down the hallway and we're just like, wow, like, okay, this is pretty cool.
How did we get here?
Yeah, totally. And you're like that, and you're thinking like, God, this is really cool. But like anything, if you're prepared for something, which is, once again, Ani being a great partner, it's like we start it perfect and then, work from there. So we were prepared. And it's like, also the other thing too is when you've been doing something for years, you realize you're going into that Shark Tank and you know way more about your product than they do. For them, it's just they want to just, they're curious about it, and it's like anything else. It'd be like a conversation. That being said, every single one of those, there's so much, you're in there for longer than you get than the actual episodes aired, as you can imagine.
Yep. And that's a lot of people say that you only see 10 minutes or so, but you're in there for like an hour kind of pitching and asking some questions. And
and it's and it's cool. It's like, you go in there and you're nervous because you see some of these TV and you see people just get eaten up. But I think they're only going to eat you up if they have a reason to. And so it's like we went in there and it was I mean, they were all fantastic people, and they really do care and want to help you. So these ones where they see people eating them up, my guess is ABC or whoever cast them because they knew it was going to create some drama.
And you need the drama for the TV, that's for sure.
Yeah, where with us, it's like we went on and it was like, it would be almost like this interview with you. Yep. It was kind of the same thing, where you're just going in and your product, and they ask you questions, and if you've done well with your product, they're impressed.
Yep.
And then they that's how it kind of plays out. So if you saw our episode, you can kind of see that there was a lot of funny stuff that happened that I wish would have made it. Because we just had such a great time. They all got great senses of humor. And there was a lot of funny moments that I wish would have made it. But
and again, I watch it. I actually do these things where I kind of review a Shark Tank. Well, I kind of started doing it probably like a little bit past midway of the last season, where I'm kind of reviewing or doing a reactionary video to the Shark Tank pitch, and just kind of doing one to yours and kind of looking at you guys' pitch. It seems like everybody, maybe with the exception of Mark, who kind of went out early on, but everybody else loved it. Even though Lori kind of went out, she went out not because she didn't like the product. She just thought that Kevin and Robert had maybe some better offers. But it seemed like everybody kind of understood what you guys were doing, and obviously Lori is the one that typically asks about patents. She, I think that impressed her, the fact that you guys had 6 patents, and everybody for the most part seemed like they were on board and interested in what you guys were doing. It was just kind of, okay, what makes sense for them to do it in terms of like an investment opportunity. But I think all of them love the deal. And I love the fact that, again, Kevin, he rides. It seems like Mark maybe kind of Robert do some riding as well. But it seemed like, again, watching the episode, everybody was like, okay, this is something here, which is, I would imagine that not only that, which I would imagine for you guys, that was good to hear, but they were giving you guys, I thought, some great advice as far as, okay, we're going to go to direct to consumer, we're going to go to the manufacturer, and it seems like it's even a number of opportunities that you guys have with that as far as avenues to go. So I was actually very impressed with the episode, and a combination of the advice and the interest from the Sharks.
Yeah, thank you. It was like I said, they were all great. They were all great, and it was funny because Mark went out. And then it was funny because you don't see a part, but he actually was asking some more questions like that. And there was a point where Ani looked at him and she goes, "Mark, are you sure you're not back in?" And then he laughs, and like, so it was cool. I mean, the whole experience was great. And I mean, what a blessing it's been to actually put us on a map. I would have to say it was probably first and foremost our patents gave us our foundation, and Shark Tank kind of gave us our legitimacy and put us on a map. So that we're actually now, it's like all of a sudden we're like, whoa. I mean, we still kind of sometimes we'll look at each other and be like, I guess we have a business we're running now. It's like, yeah, I haven't even been doing it for the last 3.5 years. But both of us are still kind of like, yeah, this is what it is. It's like, because we're still so, I mean, there's every part of it's a new part, that we're dealing with, and it's always kind of something new. So now we're like, all right, how do we scale? How do we get outside of the United States now? Sell internationally now that we got these international patents. So that's kind of our next area that we're working on, but that's how it is. So it always stays fresh. So you forget that you're even kind of running a business, even though it is. I mean, I'm not training people anymore now because this is my full-time gig.
So. Nice. No, and that's big, especially when you get a chance to make something your full-time gig. That's like, okay, yeah, we have something here. I guess a question kind of based on that or stemming from that, did you guys kind of switch up the game plan? Because I know a lot of them, I think you guys were doing DTC, and they maybe talked about kind of the licensing route, which is another great thing or a benefit that a patent allows you to be able to license a product. Did you guys maybe kind of switch things up and maybe kind of try to incorporate both of those, or said, okay, yeah, we have maybe kind of visit that licensing route with the manufacturer at a later date, but we're going to continue with the direct-to-consumer approach as we've been doing up until this point?
Sure. You asked so many great questions. So we're still D2C, and we're going to continue that. That'll always be an arm. As of now, that'll always be one of our sales arms, I guess you could say. And we're just really refining that and getting better at it. And we're basically still refining that. That being said, if we actually set up a separate, this once again was early on, we set up a separate company to hold our patent. And we license our patent to VSEAT from there. And the reason is in case we do want to license it, so that it makes it that much easier early on. That was a law school trick, and something she knew early on.
And a lot of people, and I'm glad that you said that, because I've been talking about that even more. I know you're in California, but it's a coffee company here in the Midwest. They have some locations in like Florida as well, called Big B Coffee. And, I had the co-founder on, Mike McFall, and they do around 200 million annual revenue up until this point. And he talked about how, and did they have the company that owns the IP in their cases? Again, it's a coffee company, so they have trademarks, copyrights, things like that. But they licensed the operating company or the IP company licensed the trademarks or the IP to the operating company. And that not only does it give you some flexibility as far as licensing and things like that, but it kind of builds credibility to the IP, because now the IP is getting, think in his case, they were getting 10% of the revenue from the operating company. So now it kind of gives you this credibility to the IP because it's actually seeing money from this other company that you own. And now when you're talking about going to banks and being able to loan against the IP, if that's what something that you want to do, it seems like it's easier to do, not to mention asset protection thing. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because that seems to be something that I'm hearing more, and that I'm kind of talking about more, because I think that's really the way to go, especially when you're talking about the IP and that being separate from the operating company, if you will.
Yeah, it keeps it cleaner, and it just makes it a little bit easier in case you would have to go down that route, so that it wouldn't be there for that. So yeah, we would like to. I think at this point, it's even though we're on Shark Tank, and even though we've been selling these for the last couple years now, we're still so small scale compared to it. So it's we're going to continue fighting and building and earning our market share, and making people aware that there is an option out there to the noseless bike seat. And as we grow, who knows, maybe there'll be a bigger company that comes along and they want to license it. We're sort of, if we are going to do that, at this point, it's because the other thing is, this is kind of like our child. So it's like, we're not just going to license our child and exploit our child to somebody who doesn't really care about it. or somebody who wants to say these bigger companies that say, oh, well, you're cutting into my market share, so let me buy your license and then I'm going to shelf it.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do that either. We're here to stay, and we're here to give people another option of a bike seat, so that it's not just that. I mean, if you really started digging down, the other interesting thing about the business and the bike seat business is if you dig down, and you'll find that 99% of the saddles out there are made by one company.
That's crazy.
That has 4 factories, 2 in China and 2 in Taiwan. And so there's a huge monopoly with that. And that's why most of these seats all look exactly the same. Even though this company says they don't share the IP. I mean, you're talking big names, huge brand names that are just white labeling these seats all in the same place. So that's the other thing as well, is we don't want to be shelved. And we want people to know that this is an option.
Yeah, so. For sure. No, and I like that. And I guess kind of one last thing about the whole patents, especially in foreign jurisdictions, to the extent that you wanted to, you can license it. You can still keep the kind of the rights here in the U.S., but you can license out the rights to somebody else to kind of sell the seat in these Australia or any other foreign jurisdiction that you have the patents in. So I mean, again, just having an IP situated correctly, it definitely gives you some flexibility to kind of what you want to do going forward. I do have a question, because I typically like to ask the guests these 2 questions, because I know, again, business is never just like a linear thing where things are kind of going kind of up, or maybe it is in some cases for some people, but it's typically like a sine wave where you have the ups and the downs of it. I guess the question is a 2-part question. What was the biggest breakthrough of the company? Then what was probably the biggest challenge that you guys had to overcome up until this point with the business?
Sure. By far the biggest breakthrough was Shark Tank. That was a blessing. And it's the gift that keeps on giving. We've had one re-airing of it, and it's like you just instantly see a spike in sales down. It's like, and so when that starts re-airing on TMC, that's going to be nice as well, and whatever. So that's as far as putting us on the map, that's definitely the biggest blessing.
Okay.
The biggest challenge we had came before that, and it was actually a manufacturing issue, and we realized that a part that we were making on the seat wasn't being manufactured properly, and it was causing our seat rails to break prematurely. Not break right away, but break prematurely. And as soon as we found that out, it was like, oh my God, what do we do? Like, oh, this is horrible. And Ani, of course, is like, look, I know what we do. There's only one choice. Like, we stop selling right now and we fix this. And, as much as I didn't want to do that, that was the right thing to do. Yeah. But that was hard. I mean, it's we're a tiny company. We hadn't been on Shark Tank yet. And now all of a sudden we're facing this mini product recall. Like, what the hell?
I was going to say, do you guys kind of recall the product and issue new seats out to people who have bought or experienced a seat break?
So every single person at that time, I forget how many it was. I don't know, a couple thousand maybe. Okay. So at that time we're like, we got to remake this part and send it out to a couple thousand people. And like, this is really going to suck. But we have to do this. So the first thing was a letter out to them. Hey, we found this. It's not going to break on you right away, but we're finding this. And our recommendation is that you don't ride until we send you this new piece.
Gotcha.
And a lot of people are like, screw you, don't care, I'm riding my bike. A lot of people are like, screw you, how could you send me a seat? Now I can't ride my bike, and this is my happy. And it was a mess.
Wow.
And on top of that, it was between us, it was our first real thing, our first real stress test of how do we get through this, and do we get along? And there were some times where Ani and I were actually, if we were to ever say we had a big fight, I'd say it'd be between that and how we solve this. But once we got through it, and as soon as we got through it, and when we realized that we got to the point where it was it was like, oh my God, do we continue doing this? But as soon as we actually like realized that both of us were asking, do we continue doing this? We looked at each other and we're like, yeah, of course we do. So then it was like, at that point, it was like, whoa, we checked ourselves, we stopped ourselves, and we're like, all right, let's just fix this. And so then we got through that. And going through something like that, it actually, it was sort of a blessing in disguise. I mean, one, we're making the piece better now. Two, we found a better manufacturer who can make it for a better price. So in the bigger picture, it was better. And three, it's like, after going through something like that with your partner, when you realize that you're like, no, we're doing this for the love of doing this, and for the love of each other, it was like, oh yeah, like it was so obvious. And then that made us even stronger. So it was a blessing in disguise, you could say. And you can say anytime you go through something bad, there's always a silver lining, and try to look for that, because that's what will carry you.
And I love that you said that, because I think ultimately, we call them challenging times, or we call them roadblocks or obstructions, or whatever the case may be. But ultimately in a bigger picture, those things tend to be a silver lining, or maybe not, a setback for a major setup, or however you want to put it. So I'm glad that you guys kind of found that out, or kind of went through it. And it seems like maybe the relationship between you and your partner, Ani, was better from it. And then the business overall with the manufacturing, and kind of better manufacturing was better as a result of it as well. So I'm glad that you did point that out. I guess maybe the last two questions. Number one is, again, I always like to ask this as far as, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? Because your guys' story is crazy. And for someone who's watching this, who maybe has this ideal, or they're kind of doing a double dutch where they're like, okay, do I go in or do I not go in? And they're trying to kind of get that last piece of advice that's going to kind of make that decision, or help them make that decision. What advice would you give to those aspiring entrepreneurs who wants to get off into the entrepreneurship game, maybe has an ideal or a business ideal, or whatever, a service that they want to provide, but they're kind of back and forth in terms of whether or not they want to act on it? What advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, it's funny. I constantly go back to this in my own head, and it's like, if you have an idea, and unless you're really into making money, in which case, if you are, you should go into finance. But if you have an idea and you want this business to go, let the product or the idea drive you, not the fact that you're going to make money. Because you'll wake up one day, it's going to be a ton of work. And for me, I wouldn't be motivated by a paycheck to keep doing the work. For me, it's I don't know what you would call it, but I guess it's the passion behind it. If you were really passionate about your idea, just do it. And the opportunities will come up if you are doing it, if you are working for it. The opportunities will come. I promise. I've seen it enough now. I really have. And it will, things will open up, and the right opportunities will open up. If we are driven by money and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to do this because there isn't this bike seat on the market, and X amount of dollars show this is the case, and we can make this amount of money, we wouldn't have gotten this far. Because there's so many times where you're just like, nope, it's not coming yet. But you need these little wins along the way to get you to the point, to where you'll finally start making money. But that'll just come because you're so enthralled in the business, and your little wins are what are carrying you, that the paycheck doesn't matter anymore. So that's the advice I would give to someone starting out, is whatever your idea is, you can do it. Just don't chase the money. Keep chasing the passion and the idea of what you're doing, and you will do it. It will happen.
And that's funny you said that. And a lot of times I do these interviews to try to kind of provide value to the guests, but a lot of times I end up taking a lot from them. And I think that just spoke to me, because again, I'm still a full-time practitioner. So I'm kind of doing this stuff on a day-to-day, and I'll get off this interview, do some more work, and did some work before the interview. But I mean, I do have a passion for kind of teaching this IP to so many people who don't have an idea or a clue what a trademark or a patent or a copyright is. And Yeah, I don't know. I just, and I have so many ideas in terms of like kind of children's books and a lot of different things kind of help teaching this stuff. And, you know, a lot of times I'm kind of like, oh man, this is stuff worth it. And hopefully you make money. But again, I kind of find myself leaning back into the passion and kind of the greater good of what I'm doing this for. So, I mean, I appreciate that answer, because I think that kind of spoke to me as much as it's going to speak to the audience. So definitely appreciate that. And then I guess my last question, how can people follow you? How can people purchase a product? I noticed, and maybe I just kind of missed it, that this wasn't on Amazon. I'm not sure if that's intentional. How can people follow you or Ani as well as kind of purchase a VC?
Yeah, definitely. So first is our website. That's where you can get it. It's at thevseat.com. So THEVSEAT.com. And then you can go on there, and that's where you can purchase the VSeat. I guess I'm on LinkedIn. I don't do too much social media, but I'm on LinkedIn. VSeat has its own page.
Nice.
I know on all those because we got a fantastic social media guy who's passionate about his social media. That's it. We got him from the beginning, and he does very good at it. But so yeah, we're on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We have a YouTube channel as well. But the best way to get a hold of us directly is at any time. I mean, you can fill out our contact form on our website, and it's Ani and myself doing customer service. We don't have a customer service person. I mean, that's us. And part of the reason we wanted to do that is because we, as I mentioned earlier, most of our feedback comes through our customers, and we're very much in touch with our customers. So we like being the front lines with them. We know what's going on, and we know what their demands are or what people need and that type of thing. So anybody who wants to reach out to us, I mean, I think that's how you got a hold of us, right?
I'm going to say, I can attest.
You sent us an email.
I reached out through the contact form, and I got a message from you, so I can definitely attest to you guys kind of being in control of that and kind of responding. So I definitely, that's how I got in touch with you guys.
Yeah, no, we love it. We love talking to people and learning about it. And the cool thing about biking is anyone who's really into it, they're happy people. Yeah. People get on a bike and, it's like they go back into kids. They got a smile ear to ear, unless they're riding a traditional saddle. They just see a frown.
No, for sure. So, and then again, once this interview comes out, I'll definitely put those different social media links as well as the website for people to pick up the product in the description of the interview. I mean, I definitely appreciate this time. Hopefully, I know the audience will get something out of it. I hope they had their pens and paper out, because it was a lot of jewels being dropped. And like I said, I even got something from it myself, which I definitely needed. So definitely appreciate that. Audience, go pick up the VC. Go follow Bryan and the team on social media. They're doing some big things. Especially, I'm excited to hear that you guys are going international with it. That's cool, and I definitely think that's going to be a game changer for you guys. Audience, until next time, we will see you. Take care.